I'm Rick from Marvin Models, DJI dealer from the UK and RC specialist for over 40 years. In this series of videos I'm going to be covering DJI's new Mavic Air. This is a new drone which fits firmly in between the Spark and the Mavic Pro. If you'd like to support my YouTube channel, please subscribe to my channel and remember to hit the little bell icon in the corner, and that way you'll be alerted whenever I post up some new videos. Okay, so before we fly for the first time, you will need to charge your battery. So what we're going to need is the Mavic, we're going to need the controller, we're going to need the charger, we're going to need the power adapter, appropriate cables, and any additional batteries that you might have. So first thing we need to do is we need to remove the battery from the craft. This is easily done. You'll see these small catches on the side. There's one on each side. Just pull them back and then the battery lifts out and we can put the Mavic aside. Second, we need our charger, and this is the charging station here. So this just opens up like a dainty butterfly, and we just put that on the ground there, and then the batteries, as you'll see the connector there, and that will marry up with the connector there. They simply just slide on like that. So we want to do that with all the batteries that we have, and in this case we have 3 of them. Now, once it's on charge, you will notice you've got a scrolling set of lights there. That means this battery is charging. This will not charge all 4 batteries or 3 batteries or multiple batteries at the same time. What it will do, it will analyze each individual battery, pick the one with the most charge in it, and actually charge that one first, and you can see that's now scrolling. There is also a LED indicator inside there, you'll see that, just to show that there's power going into the adapter. Now we can basically put that aside while that's charging. The second part we need to do is we need to charge the controller itself. Now we can check the power that's in the controller just by pushing the button. Now this controller may not charge because I've actually already charged the batteries, but to charge it, if we go to the side, unplug the USB cable, this is a small USB, standard Android USB cable, and then we get our USB cable off our charger. Now this is the part you've got to look very closely. If you look inside the USB port there, it's not it doesn't plug in either way like an iOS cable does, so you need to make sure you get it plugged in the wrong way. If you go to plug it in and there's resistance, you've probably got it going in the wrong way. And as you can now see, we now have actually the scrolling lights. Now before you fly your Mavic for the first time, you will have to activate it, you'll have to do firmware updates. Everything has to be charged for those updates. If you don't have them, if it's not above 50%, it will stop you doing the updates, because it's imperative that the updates don't fail halfway through due to a failed battery. So now we'll just leave those charging and we'll come back to this. Okay, so once you've got the controller and your battery or batteries charged, the first thing we need to do is moving on to activating for the first time. So the first thing you need obviously is the drone. This is the Mavic, and we need to put the battery in. Now it only goes in one way with all these sorts of things, and it hooks in. You'll see like a little lip on the back of the battery there. It just hooks in under there and then just pushes down and clips in. Now before we power the camera up, we want to take this gimbal guard off. Fully encloses the gimbal and protects it when you're not using it, and to do that we just pull in the little spring clips there, and then this just slides forward. If you don't take off, what happens is it locks the gimbals in place, and then what it will do, it will overload the motors and you'll start getting gimbal overload warnings. So we want to take that off. Another good practice if you're powering your craft up indoors is actually to remove the props. Now it's quite simple to take the props off. If I show you, try and get the best way around so you can see it. They're hooked in, so all you have to do is just grip the motor with your fingers and just push the prop down, turn it one way. If it doesn't turn it the other way, and then it just simply springs off like that. Watch out, there is a small spring on there, make sure it doesn't come off. So we want to do that with all the props. Now there's no reason why the motors would start up, but as good practice, let's not tempt fate. So I want to take them off, and then we can lay the drone back down again for turning on. Now on the controller there's a small sticker which we want to remove. What the sticker basically covers is it just shows you all the basic functionality of it, but what it'll also be doing is showing, if we just pull these out, Now, although we don't need to do this just yet, but we'll just do it as practice, is your controller, you'll probably notice the controller doesn't have any sticks. He's just pushing. I have to say, this is a phenomenally good idea. Now, to fit these on, these actually screw in. So all we do is pop it in there and then just screw with your fingers. Same with that one, pop it in and screw in with your fingers, and that's them in. Okay, so now we've done that. Now, for the purposes of this video, normally you would have a phone, and the way it would work is the connector that we unplugged for charging, we would just plug that back in. Okay, the other end of it is inside here. Now, it comes with an iOS one, but you do get Android ones included as well. So your phone would simply clasp into there. You would put the phone in there and then the two clamps would come together. Now, I'm going to be using a tablet, and then the reason for that is so that it's going to be easier for you to see. So because we're going to be doing that, we're going to just plug in an extra cable. Now, there's an extra port on the bottom because some people do want to fly with tablets. Now, if you want to use a tablet, as you probably notice, this is not going to fit in there. What you would have to do is, if I show you this tablet mount, this is the tablet mount we do, the Lithor one. This is actually my Mavic controller, but as you can see by the size of the clamp, this will take virtually any size of tablet. So you'll find the link in the description if you want to purchase one of these. But the first thing we need to do, we need to plug the cable into the bottom of the controller. Now, one thing to remember when you're wanting to use the USB out on the bottom, remember to disconnect this one, otherwise it'll just say nothing's connected. Okay, right, so I'll now be using my iPad. If I try and tilt that so you don't get all the light on it. There we go, it's a bit better. The first thing you want to do is you need the DJI Go 4 app. So if you go onto your either the Play Store or the App Store, depending whether you're iOS or Android. Now, there are two. There's DJI Go, that will not work, DJI Go 4. So the first thing you want to do is download that, get it on your tablet, and then we'll get that booted up. And you'll be greeted with a screen looking like this. Now, what we need to do is, we need to turn the craft on. So we do this by pushing the button once, and within 2 seconds pushing it and holding it. So if I push it once and push it and hold it, when you see the lights light up, the craft is now on. And you'll see the lights flashing, etc., and a wee tone. And then we do the same with the controller. Push once, push again, wait for the beep, let go. Now, you'll have noticed that it will now come up looking like this. So this is kind of sort of startup screen. Now, the first thing that we're going to be greeted with is you'll notice you've now got a red bar. Now, this is requiring a firmware update. Typically, DJI will not ship goods out with the latest firmwares. They tend to be one behind, just in case there's a bug and they have to address it or wind it back, rather than a lot of people suddenly having craft that need reworked. So it's very easy to do the update on this because it's all done through the tablet. So the first thing we want to do is just click on that, and it will now be greeted with a screen. Down here it'll have the version number of the firmware, so if it's ongoing firmwares you can check to see if you've got the latest one, although it won't tell you that you need to update if you've already got the latest one. And then you've got down here is all the different versions, whether it's iOS or Android. And of course, if you want to know what's actually new on it, you can actually scroll through the update log and see what's new. But the first thing we need to do, as I do know it's a firmware we need to do, is I'm going to click on download, and then we're just going to let that download. Now, to save you hanging about, because it sometimes can be a big download, I'm just going to cut the video here. Okay, so that's the update now fully come down, and as you now see it's going to go straight on to updating. So now we're just going to leave the craft to actually, for the tablet to send the actual firmware to the craft itself and start updating it. So you now see we're at 1%, so again, to save time, I'm just going to cut the video here. Okay, so we're almost at the end now. During the update, as you probably just heard, the craft was restarting there. You will probably see lots of light changes, etc. on the craft. That's all the various systems updating. But we're almost at the end there, we're at 99%. Now, if you do find for whatever reason that the firmware is failing to update, like if it possibly holds for a very long time at a certain percentage, I have found sometimes if you just stop it, turn everything off, and then turn it back on again, typically you find it has actually updated, but it's just that the app didn't quite update itself. As you can see, that's done. Now it says, so to finalize the update, we need to manually restart the craft. So we're going to pick the craft up, we're going to push the button once, we're going to push it again, wait for all the lights to go out, wait for the craft to turn off, and then we're going to turn it back on again. This just refreshes the firmware on. Let's put that down. Now we do have, just shift that, we do have an update complete, but what will happen now when it all reboots up itself, it will recheck just to make sure it is actually on the latest firmware and it's not just caching on the tablet. You sometimes get that when you updated the firmware and then you go back into the app, it'll say that it needs the update, but if you actually check the firmware that the craft is already on, it is actually on the latest firmware, and sometimes it just caches. If you do find that, again, best thing, switch everything off, cancel the app, stop it background running, and then reboot it up. So what we're going to do now, we're now going to go into the craft. Now, the first thing you have to do during this update, sorry, not during the update, during the activation, you have to register the craft for the first time. So it's asking us to, we're going to be registering that and covering that now. So we click on next, just the terms and conditions. Yes, you can have my oldest child. There we go. Oh, right, and okay, so what it's asking you now, it says, do you want to basically give it a name? Now, I'm not sure if you can actually change this name, so it's probably worth making sure that you give the craft a name that possibly, if you ever do decide to sell it, it's not going to seem a bit weird. So obviously don't call it something like Pies Rock. I'm just going to leave it at that. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take the Marineville part out, so just delete that back and just call it RC Mavic Air. Continue. Now, first thing it's asking is mode. What this is if I pick up the controller, you have different flight modes on the controller. So for example, mode 2 is the most popular mode of controller, and what that means is that the throttle up and down will be here, the yawing on left and right will be here, pitching forward, pitching back, banking right, banking left. Depending on mode 2, mode 3, you can have it where the throttle's across at this side. So if you're not sure, I would probably strongly suggest the mode 2, and it comes preset on mode 2. So next, that's just the simple stuff. Do you want it metric, imperial, etc.? We'll just leave it. In fact, I'm going to put it on imperial, so things like the speed, etc. is on miles per hour. Next one. Now, beginner's mode. If you've never had a drone before, I would leave it in this mode. And what it will do is it will limit, as it shows you down here in the little image, it will limit the height and distance that you can fly to 30 meters, locks it into GPS mode, locks out all the advanced features. Wise if you haven't ever flown a drone before. I'm not going to put it, now you can take this out later on, so don't worry about locking it into something. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to take it out of beginner's mode because I'm far from a beginner. Now, what you will have to do is, at this point here, it's asking you to create a DJI account. Now, I've already got a DJI account. That's my DJI account email address. And if you're one of our customers and you have any support issues, you email that email address. Obviously, if you brought it elsewhere, you'll need to email them. I can't do support for the rest of the world. So what it would actually ask you to do is create an account at this point, and it's just simply an email address and a password. So as I'm already logged in, I'm going to activate. Now, you will need to have your tablet connected to a Wi-Fi network. So if it's on your phone, that won't be a problem because it will have your data. Now, it's going to ask you about DJI Care Refresh. What it basically is, look into it before you agree to it. You can always do it later on, but you've got to do it, if I remember right, it's either 48 hours or 72 hours after activation. But basically, it's like accidental damage cover. But do read the small print. Don't automatically assume you're going to get what you think you're going to get. For example, a completely written off craft does cost you a small amount of money. In the UK, I think it's about £79. They will send you a new craft. Well, actually, that's the thing. They may not send you a new craft. They actually send you a replacement. So it may be just another one out of their parts bin. So watch out for that. But it's up to you. Worthwhile if you're feeling a bit clumsy. obviously I don't want it. And the next one we're on to now this is a DJI knowledge quiz. Now what it is, if you're new, they're going to ask you a few questions just to make sure that you're not like a complete numpty and you shouldn't be flying drones, because it will just constantly fail you. Now you can only skip it 4 times. Right, okay, so I've now completed the questionnaire. Obviously I can't show you how to do it because obviously it is a questionnaire to make sure that you're well aware of the rules and regulations, so you'll have to complete that yourself. So we've got that done, and we're now, you can see, activating device. And continue. Please restart the aircraft to complete activation. Now in this case actually it's going to, as you can now see, it's shutting itself down. It's going to be doing it all itself. As you can see, it's just now redetecting the aircraft. And there we go, connect to the craft. Alright, okay, now at this part you have the DJI Academy. I'll just quickly go into it. Basically what's in here, there's lots of tutorials, videos, and there's also a flight simulator. And of course along the bottom, DJI are going to want to try and sell you more stuff, but never buy direct from DJI, always go through a recognised dealer. And I don't mean so much a recognised dealer like a big chain, I mean like a proper dealer, somebody who actually knows about drones. Because when you run into problems, these are the guys that are going to help you out. So we will just come back out of that. Okay, and then we just go on to skip. And that is more or less us. Now, it's got there where it's basically flagging up about the DJI's FlySafe database. This is all the no-fly zones, etc. So I'm going to ignore it just because I'll update it at a later date. So I'm just going to ignore that just so we can move on. Now, it's pretty much, that is the craft now all finished, updated, and ready to fly. And it's going to be, now we're going to move on to the next part of the video. Okay, so running through the app and all the basic features, I'll just do a quick run through and I will go back over it on another video in more in depth. So moving across the top here, what this is this will give you your flight status. So at the moment you notice it's flashing, they're saying no positioning, ATI mode, because it's not got enough satellites as we're indoors. So if you're low to the ground, within 10 meters, the visual positioning system on the bottom of the craft, these little sensors here, they will keep it in a sort of virtual GPS lock location. But if you're higher than that and you're outdoors, it's obviously going to drift with the wind. So as you see there, it says vision positioning. So what that means is the visual positioners are close enough to the ground that will lock it in place. But if it says ATI, no positioning, then do be prepared that it could drift. Moving across, under this menu here, you've got the bulk of most of all the different flight settings. As I say, I will cover this in a separate video. And then moving across here, you have this one which will indicate how many satellites you're locked into. This is showing that the obstacle avoidance system is active. This is showing that the condition of the signal between the controller and the craft. So obviously, if that changes or there's an issue with it, then that could be a problem. And here you've got your battery condition. Shows you the individual cells of the battery. Under here you've got more settings. So this is more tablet settings, etc. Moving down here, this button here is going to swap you between taking pictures and taking video. This button here, obviously to start and stop video. We've got camera settings under that one. We've got the menu for playing things back. Down the bottom corner, we've got the map, so you can have a live feed. So if you're out and about, you would need data to make this work. It is handy to have. You can have a satellite mode in that as well. Then moving across the bottom here, this is just like your aircraft heads-up display. So for example, distance to the ground, you've got your vertical speed, you've got height, you've got distance and horizontal speed. Bottom corner here, we've got the radar. This will tell you what way your craft is pointing in relation to you. This indicates whether it's got the APAS. What that is, it's a mode where if the craft is returning on return to home, etc., and it comes up against obstacles, it will actually navigate around the obstacles. Here, this is where we select our different advanced flight options. If you don't know what you're doing yet, do some practice, don't go straight into these, but I'll cover these again in another video. And here you have automatic takeoff and automatic land. Now, me personally, use those features only if you need to. because you should always be under full control of your craft when landing and taking off. It's the best way to react to it. And in here, this is the obstacle avoidance system. So for example, I don't think it's going to detect me because we're so close to the ground, it's kind of seeing the ground, but it's like a sort of reverse sensors on your car, and you've obviously got them at the front as well. And then coming back out, touch the DJI logo and it takes you back out. And down here we've got equipment, that's the craft itself. We've got an editor for video editing, the Sky Pixel for uploading your images to the internet, and then the Me, that's basically your DJI account. Okay, so we'll just have a quick rundown of the controller and its function. So as I said before, I do have this cable disconnected because I have got this cable plugged in here. But if this wasn't plugged in here, this one would be plugged in. Now your phone just slips into the clamshells. There's a bit of adjustability depending on how big your device is. As I said before, if you do need a very big device clipped in, then obviously you want something like this. This is the Lift Thor bracket. We sell these, there's a link in the description. And this will extend out and will clamp onto really large devices. And the way that it works, as you can see, this plate is clamping in where the phone goes, and as you see, that comes up over the back. This is all poiseable, all fully adjustable, and you've even got a lanyard connection there if you want to like hook it on. It balances very well, tablet fits in there nicely. Now coming back to the craft, so working our way around, the first thing you obviously want to do before you fly is you have to remember to pop your antennas out. Now quickly going over the best setup for your antennas, and this can always contribute to low range. Obviously leaving them folded down would not be an idea, but the way the antennas work is you do not have them up like aerials. You know, the signal does not come out the top of the antenna. It actually emanates from the antenna around the sides like a big donut glowing out. So the way that you would do it, for example, if your craft was flying out over there, you would have the paddles pointing towards the craft to give you the best signal. And the same as if you were flying predominantly above your head, you could actually flip the paddles down like that, so the signal coming out would be going up the way. Because one of the common ones I see is people say, well, I was flying right above myself, like 120 meters, and it just keep cutting out. I keep losing video signal, and that's because the antennas were like that, which is correct, but not when they're pointing up towards the craft. So just again, just watch out for that one. Now, obviously, the main part are your control sticks. Now, as I said in an earlier video, we're in mode 2, which is what we traditionally fly in the UK and, well, most of the other world. So what we have here, we have the throttle on this stick, so that's height, so that will make the drone hover up, let go, it will hover, pull the stick down, and the drone will come down and it will hover. Now don't worry about pulling the stick all the way back. If the craft is in the sky, it will not shut the motors out as you're descending. You can do that and it will descend at full speed. When the craft is physically on the ground, you pull that back and hold it, it will cut the motors. That is yaw. So if I hold up the Mavic here, I'll kind of try and mimic out how this is going to work. So that would yaw the craft to the left, that would yaw it to the right, and as we said before, throttle up, hover, throttle down, hover. And then moving across to the other stick, let's just swap that over. This will pitch the craft forward, let go, hover, pull back, craft will fly back, hover, and then that is bank into the right and then bank into the left. And it's obviously a combination of those controls which will give you very advanced flight features. Now, drones are incredibly easy to fly, but I always say to people, drones are hard to fly really well. So you do need a lot of practice. Don't just suddenly go out trying to recreate some awesome scenario, following cars and things like that, because you're just going to end up crashing it. And don't place blind faith in the obstacle avoidance, because sometimes there's things it just will not see. So moving on to the buttons, obviously we had the on off button. I showed you earlier how to turn it off and on, so you push it once, push it and hold it for turning on, and the same for turning off. Moving across the front, we have sport mode. What sport mode is proceed with massive caution. Now you will have to go into the app to activate sport mode. Again, I'll cover that in another video, but again, advanced user only, because what it does, it makes the drone fly much faster, but it also turns all the obstacle avoidance off, so you can easily end up crashing it. We have a function key here. The pause key, what that is for, if you're using any of the advanced flight features like plotting waypoints, active track, at any time where the craft is flying on its own in an automated feature, hitting the pause button will just stop it dead. So if you set a flight pattern and then suddenly it's heading towards a tree into imminent danger, hit the pause key and it will stop. Right, moving around. We've got our buttons up here. You've got record button, you've got, whoops, sorry, out of shot there. You've got your record button, you've got take a picture button, we have a menu button up there, and here we have the gimbal tilt. So if I turn that around, I don't know if we'll get to see it moving, we won't get in shot, so see that, gimbal going up, gimbal going down. That's what that does. So that's just a quick run round of the controller. It's a simple controller. It's very similar to the Mavic Pro. The main difference is it just doesn't have the screen on it. Now, to actually take the craft off, now I probably touched on earlier about using the auto takeoff, auto land, which I don't recommend. It's a simple arming of the motors, because if you can see, I'm doing up, down, and the craft isn't taking off. What we have to do is we have to do a CSC, combined stick command, which is pulling the sticks back towards themselves to arm the motor. So if we do that now, as you see, now obviously you remember earlier I took the props off, otherwise that would not be wise. And then to stop the motors, we just simply pull that back and hold it. Now you see it's on the ground, it did stop the motors, but if we were flying, it actually would not have, it wouldn't have taken off. And we also, as I sort of missed out earlier, we do actually have a home button. If you had like a complete system, when I say a complete system, if your tablet died, you looked up, you couldn't see the craft, although you should always stay within visual line of sight, and you were basically flying blind, simply hitting the home button will bring the craft back to where it took off and set its home location. Okay, of course, before we fly, we're actually going to have to put the props back on. So, now, the props are not all the same. So if I push those out, so you can see them, as you will notice, some will have white markers on and some will have black markers on, and these correspond with the actual motors. You've got motors with white markers and some without, because you have left and right handed props. That's why the drone doesn't just twist around because of the torque of the motor. So to put the props on, we take the corresponding, as you see that is a match. You've got the wee hooks on the bottom, push them over so they actually sit into the motor. Now the way I do it is if you just grab the motor, pinch it in your fingers, take that, line them up with the gaps, push it in, and then just turn. Like I turn that way, it doesn't turn, go the other way, it turns, and then it locks it in. See it go and click there? So make sure you give it a wiggle to make sure it is locked in, otherwise what will happen if it's not locked in properly, the prop's going to spin off, either in flight or just as you take off. So again, with the black one, hold the motor, pinch it in your fingers, line up the little catches, push down, turn, went that way, let it go, springs up, give it a wiggle. Now, thing to point out is, you might notice if you had a Mavic before, is the props are not folding props, they're rigid, kind of like a Phantom, etc. Which means if they hit things, they can get damaged easily. So, always worth double checking your props before you take off, and that's not just in the prop condition. So what you want to do, I usually just run my finger down the leading edge of the prop. If there's any dings, I mean dings aren't really a big problem, but have a little look at the blade, make sure there's no cracks or anything, because believe me, if you lose a part of a prop, it will knock this thing out of balance so much it probably just knock the drone out of the sky. So best not have it. Usually you get a bit of forgiveness, like the prop will crack first and you can see, you come down, give it a wee flex, and you can check where it's okay. So check for that. Another thing to check as well, which is very important, if you do have a crash, these little tacks can get chipped or broken. Always make sure they're in good condition, and that's why I do that thing where I hold the motor and I try to twist the prop, is to make sure that if any of these catches have been rounded out, it doesn't just click and pop off. So that's really important. So check those. If you're in doubt of anything and you've got the Fly More bundle, you've got a multitude of props, change it. Don't take the risk. It's only 4 props, there's no redundancy at all. Props are quite flexible though. Maybe we'll see some upgraded ones at a later date, maybe a bit stiffer. Now, touching also on props, never ever ever fit aftermarket props. They must be DJI. Typically you can always tell that they're DJI, and they usually will have some, actually these ones don't, they usually have some sort of indication on them, or usually like a DJI embossing, but they don't. But what I would do is just make sure, if you have picked up a set of props and you're not sure, just have a look, make sure they all have the same numbers and logos, etc. If there's anything missing, chances are it could be a copy prop. Just don't take the chance. I mean, if DJI don't sell it, don't use it. I've seen that causing so many problems in the past. I hope you found that video helpful, and if you'd like to support my channel, remember to subscribe and hit the little bell icon, and that way you'll be alerted when there's any new videos. Also, you can also head over to my Patreon channel, and for as little as $1 a month you can support me to keep helping bringing you more informative videos. Always remember to fly safe, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you very much. I do need your support because balls. Right, from as little as a pound, oh! I hope you found that. Fucking dying here.